All right, moving on to someone else who most definitely does not want your life to get any better, and basically would like life to just sort of like it reached its apex of goodness in around 2008 to 2016.
Those were the days.
I am speaking, of course, about Joe Biden. And I mentioned on the previous episode that we wanted to spend some time.
Joseph Robinette Biden. That's his middle name.
Joseph P. Biden.
No.
Joseph
Robinette.
P. Biden.
His name is Robinette.
He is...
That's not even a woman's name. It's a female dog's
yeah,
name.
it's not a thing.
And I'd like to spend some time with the life and career of Joe Biden because he is currently polling at the top of the list of Democratic contenders. I'm sure just based on name recognition alone.
I mean, the at this point the pattern's pretty easily represented. Lieberman was leading in 2004 because he had been the last VP, not even VP, but VP candidate.
And Sanders is right after Biden. I think probably largely also on name recognition.
Yeah,
based on the
that's
fact
true
that
too.
He was, like a very visible
Yeah.
presence in the last election. But I think it is worth spending some time on the life and career of Joe Biden because basically his career in American politics is uniquely awful in almost every way. And to prepare for this, I went back to one of my Bibles, one of these tomes that I thumb through from time to time when I'm feeling down. I need to connect with some of the wisdom of people who have come before me. I'm speaking, of course, about Alexander Coburn's A Colossal Wreck, a road trip through political scandal, corruption, and American culture. And I knew Alex would have some good words about Joe Biden. And I'd like to start by doing a very rare anti-reading series. By anti-reading series, I mean I'm going to read you something that's actually good. This was written in
That's
August
weird, dude.
23rd, 2008, around the time Joe Biden became Obama's running mate. Change and hope are not words one associates with Senator Joe Biden. A man so ripely symbolic of everything that is unchanging and hopeless about our political system that a computer simulation of the corporate political paradigm, Senator in Congress, would turn out Biden in a nanosecond. The first duty of any senator from Delaware is to do the bidding of the banks and the large corporations that use the tiny state as a Dropbox and legal sanctuary. Biden has never failed his masters in his primary task. Find any bill that sticks it to the ordinary folk on behalf of the money power, and you'll likely detect Biden's hand at work. The Bankruptcy Act of 2005 was just one example. In concert with his fellow corporate serf, Senator Tom Carper, Biden blocked all efforts to hinder bankrupt corporations from fleeing their real locations to the legal sanctuary of Delaware. Since Obama is himself a corporate serf, and from day one in the U.S. Senate has been attentive to the same masters that employ Biden, the ticket is well balanced. The seesaw with Obama at one end and Biden at the other dead level on the fulcrum of the corporate capital. Another shining moment in Biden's progress in the current presidential term was his conduct in the hearings on Judge Alito's nomination to the U.S. Supreme Court. From the opening moments of the Judiciary Committee's session in January 2006, it became clear that Alito faced no serious opposition. On that first ludicrous morning, Senator Pat Leahy sank his head into his hands, shaking it in unbelieving despair as Biden blathered out a self-serving and inane monologue lasting a full 20 minutes before he even asked Alito one question. In his allotted half hour, Biden managed to pose only 5 questions, all of them ineptly phrased. He did pose 2 questions about Alito's membership of a racist society at Princeton, but had already undercut them in his monologue by calling Alito a man of integrity, not once but twice, and further trivialized the interrogation by reaching under the dais to pull out a Princeton cap and put it on.
Oh my God.
A Delaware newspaper made deadly fun of him for his awful performance, eliciting the revealing confession from Biden that I made a mistake. I should have gone straight to my question. I was trying to put him at ease. Biden is a notorious flapjaw. His vanity deludes him into believing that every word that drops from his mouth is minted in the golden currency of Pericles. Vanity is the most conspicuous characteristic of U.S. senators en bloc, nourished by deferential acolytes and often expressed in loudest sexual advances to staffers, interns, and the like. Why did Obama choose Biden? One important constituency for Biden was no doubt the Israel lobby inside the Democratic Party. Obama, no matter how fervent his proclamations of support for Israel, has always been viewed with some suspicion by the lobby.
Wonder why.
For half the lifespan of the state of Israel, Biden has been its unswerving acolyte in the U.S. Senate. That was Alexander Coburn writing on August 23rd, 2008 about Senator Joe Biden.
You know what's the freakiest thing about Biden? Genuine, unnerving, weird thing about him that makes me makes him feel like a lot of these guys, just like you're a lizard man. He always bragged about the fact that he's one of the poorest senators, right? Like he never had a lot of money. He's got like a 6-figure net worth. They made a lot of that in 2008.
What a fucking loser.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like he was an absolute crook and corporate bagman for all the insurance companies and credit card companies that run Delaware. And he didn't even get he didn't get a boat out of it or anything. Yeah. What kind of freak is like, yes, I will be your Renfield in the Senate. And no thanks. Just your gratitude is all I need.
To be fair, though, your money goes really far in Delaware.
That's true.
Yeah. Do you know?
I just want to ride the train. I don't need a boat.
Do you know how much like a crooked Cook County alderman makes? Like they're just caked up.
But that's
Michael Madigan is just fucking dumping out stacks.
But because this Biden, it's the power. And it's the press. That's what he doesn't give a shit.
He's a true believer. It's actually more disturbing than someone that's just purely corrupt.
He should have been a YouTuber. He should have been. He has the personality of a Jake Paul. He has the same shit personality. Shut the fuck up. But I love that Alito thing is great. Don't you hate it when you try to play good cop, bad cop, and you're like, oh, I just did good cop, good cop.
I'm kind of astounded they fucking left him on the Judiciary Committee after the Anita Hill fucking hearings.
Are you shocked?
Shameful. No, I'm not. But it's
Democrats.
It's breathtaking how badly he fucked that up.
Well, let's go over that. His role in the Judiciary Committee. He was instrumental in stopping Bork from getting on the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, that was kind of a layup. You just look at that guy's weird flesh beard, and you're just like, no.
However, he was operating at a different time when we didn't think that, like, he was Bork was political in a way that was not common for.
Bork would answer the questions about do you believe women should be killed for getting an abortion?
And it was Teddy Kennedy and his big balloon head and his speech that really nailed the coffin on Bork anyway.
So we'll give Biden half credit for that. However, his performance during the Clarence Thomas hearings are world historically awful, and probably the most important thing he did as head of that committee at the time, controlled by fucking Democrats, was not allow any of the other accusers than Anita Hill, and there was at least two others who were willing to testify about Clarence Thomas.
Would
not let them. And then his cross-examination of Anita Hill was also horrible. Definitely
very hostile.
Treated her as a hostile witness for sure. Clarence Thomas will be on the Supreme Court for another 30 years thanks to Joe Biden. Let's talk a little bit.
Nanobots.
Let's talk a little bit. We talk about he is a consummate bagman for the banking industry and being from the state of Delaware. He voted for something called the Regal-Neal Banking Efficiency Act in 1994, which allowed commercial banks to do business over state lines. And then he also voted for the Graham-Leach-Bliley Act, Financial Services Modernization Act of 1999, which famously overturned Glass-Steagall, which separated commercial from investment banking.
That worked out well.
So 2008 economic crash, he had his hands in that as well. Probably more famous, if you're familiar with Biden now, because he's taking more heat for it. He should be taking a lot of heat for the bank bailout in 2008, as well as all of these, financial modernization acts as well. But he is taking a little heat now because of his history with the crime bills and being being bad cop, finally being bad cop, but basically just to America's swollen underclass of people who sold like a dime bag of crack and got 30 years fucking time.
Guys, I remembered to do it, but at the wrong time.
He's the father of the crack powder cocaine sentencing disparity.
Yeah, it was everyone was so excited about it too. The Heritage Foundation, for example, gave him a ringing endorsement for his role in the crime bill.
This is now from a Jacobin article by Branko Marcetic. One episode in particular sums up Biden's record. In September 1989, George H.W. Bush delivered a speech outlining his national drug control strategy, in which he called for harsher punishments for drug dealers, nearly $1.5 billion towards drug-related law enforcement, and more prisons, more jails, more courts, more prosecutors at every level throughout the country. At the time, the Heritage Foundation gushed that it constituted the largest increase in resources for law enforcement in the nation's history, and it's now remembered as a key moment in the escalation of the war on drugs. For Biden, however, it was a half measure. Quite frankly, the president's plan is not tough enough, bold enough, or imaginative enough to meet the crisis at hand, Biden said in a televised response to Bush's speech. In a nutshell, the president's plan does not include enough police officers to catch the violent thugs, enough prosecutors to convict them, enough judges to sentence them, or enough prison cells to put them away for a long time.
It's not creative. It's not imaginative enough. Where are the trebuchets to launch them into brick walls? Where are the giant human-sized mouse traps where you put crack in the middle and then they slap into their spines?
Listen to this. Biden was already a tough-on-crime evangelist before this speech, of course. In the 1980s, Biden worked with his, quote, old buddy, arch segregationist Strom Thurmond to pass several bills that fundamentally reshaped the American criminal justice system in the direction of more incarceration. They, along with Ted Kennedy, had worked on earlier unsuccessful proposals that raised maximum penalties, removed a directive requiring the U.S. Sentencing Commission to take into account prison capacity, and created the cabinet-level drug czar position. In 1984, they passed the Comprehensive Crime Control Act, which, among other things, abolished parole, imposed a less generous cap on good time sentence reductions, and allowed the Sentencing Commission to issue more punitive guidelines. Just following up that little hyperlink about his good buddy Strom Thurmond, I came across this anecdote. Joe Biden delivered Strom Thurmond's eulogy at Strom's own request. Saying of it, he says, "Some of you knew my relationship with Strom. Did I ever think when I got here I would become friends with Strom Thurmond? He stood for everything. I got started because of civil rights. Yet, on his 100th birthday," again, evil people never fucking die.
It's just
Yet on his 100th
awful.
birthday, shortly thereafter, on his deathbed, I got a phone call from his wife, Nancy. She said, "I'm standing here at the nurse's station, Joe, with the doctor. Just left Strom.
He keeps eyeing the nurse.
He asked me to call you. He wants a favor." I said, "Of course, Nancy, whatever he wants." He said he'd like you to do his eulogy. Well, I never thought, never in my wildest dreams, that this place, these walls, the honor that resides, would put me in a position where a man whose career was one of the most interesting in modern American history asked me to be his eulogist?
Leonardo DiCaprio in Django Unchained was one of the most interesting and honor-bound characters.
It's particularly hilarious because, Strom Thurmond must be so dumb to think that Joe Biden is a good speaker.
Right.
It almost makes you wonder if his wife, after years of resentment, wanted to get in one last fuck you at the very end. She's like, I know who's going to do your fucking eulogy.
It's the guy who's going to only talk about himself for the entire time, which that was, because he's one of the most narcissistic maniacs on earth. By the way, he says that his career started in civil rights. That's kind of true. One of his big issues when he ran for Senate in the 1970s was opposing busing. So he is correct that civil rights did, in a way,
that was
get him into politics.
That he,
I want to return now to Mr. Coburn again, because wouldn't you know it, he has written quite a few wonderful paragraphs about Mr. Biden. And this will bring us back once again to the issue of the Israel lobby. Alexander Coburn, writing in July 10th, 2009, after he's become vice president, writes, "Appropriately, it was on the topic of Israel as vice president, Biden first tossed aside unmanly prudence. Even given the zeal of almost every member of the U.S. Congress to satisfy the Israel lobby, Biden has always been conspicuous for his slavish posture towards the holy state. Accepting Obama's offer of the vice presidential nomination last summer, he announced emphatically that he would not have considered accepting the invitation if he had entertained the slightest suspicion that Obama was not 100% in Israel's corner. In fact, the Israel lobby did entertain these unworthy suspicions, which is why it pushed strongly for Biden as VP. It wasn't far into Obama's first months in the White House that the lobby began to feel that even though Obama's chief of staff is Rahm Emanuel, their suspicions were justified. The president dared to mention in public the right of Palestinians to some form of state. He said that the settlements on the West Bank had to stop. True, he didn't say anything categorical about the actually existing illegal settlements. He seemed too eager to parley with Iran, too demure on the topic of its nuclear program. On July 5th, George Stephanopoulos interviewed Biden in Baghdad for his Sunday morning talk show on the ABC network and promptly put the question, if the Israelis decide Iran is an existential threat and they have to take out the nuclear program militarily, the United States will not stand in the way? Biden lunged for the driver's wheel and swerved U.S. government policy in a whole new direction. We cannot dictate to another sovereign nation what they can and cannot do when they make a determination. If they make a determination, they're existentially threatened and their survival is threatened by another country. The White House spent the next 2 days categorically denying that it was giving, via Biden, Israel the go-ahead to make a unilateral attack on Iran. The United States is absolutely not flashing Israel a green light to attack Iran, U.S. President Barack Obama told CNN in Moscow on July 7th. Then, in the same Stephanopoulos interview, Biden sucker punched Obama again, addressing the failure of Obama's stimulus program to halt the surge in unemployment and prompt recovery, a failure that has the president tumbling in the polls. In devising this program, Biden confided to Stephanopoulos, the Obama administration had misread the extent of the economic catastrophe it inherited. The truth is, we and everyone else misread the economy. The figures we worked off in January were the consensus figures and most of the blue chip indexes out there. So once again, back to Biden and his wonderful views on foreign policy and on banking.
The Onion, remember?
Yeah.
He's like, cool grandpa. He was like washing a Trans Am in front of the White House. That's adorable.
Yeah, dude. And he's just so, dude, when him and Obama would get out there and they would just like, Obama would be like he'd be the straight man because he was adulting like a boss. But then Biden would be like, yo, I'm like a fucking line break joke from Weird Twitter. Check me out. Pretty good.
I do have a soft spot, I have to confess, for Joe Biden because, like me, he overuses the word literally. And so I feel
also like
kinship.
a YouTuber.
Yeah, I feel a kinship to him on that.
I mean, Matt, you hate YouTube, but like all of them being centralized there, Jake and Logan Paul, everyone else in Team 10, Shane Dawson, they can just do that for the rest of their lives and not become shitty center-right politicians.
That's true, until Logan Paul becomes president of the neo-American imperium.
Well, I've been in Logan Paul's ear. I'm attempting to become the Rasputin of Team 10.
I wish you luck.
Sorry, one last quote from Coburn here. He says, no one thinks Biden is running the country, and maybe this is the core of Obama's Biden problem. Almost all politicians are narcissists, and Biden, more than most, is narcissistically vulnerable. It's why he so often got into trouble for lying about his achievements. It's why, as a senator, he couldn't stop talking.
Yeah, and then he got so buffaloed by Obama as his friend that he allowed him to talk him out of running for president in 2016 when he probably could have beaten Hillary and definitely would have beaten Trump, which is what his pitch is now for 2020 is we can just do 2016 all over again. Mm-hmm. And that it'll be exactly the same. And then those 70,000 white people in the Midwest who flipped and led to Trump's election, they would vote for me. And he's right that probably would have happened in 2016, but things are different now.
Yeah, but how fun is it going to be to watch him figure out during a debate or a speech that his window has closed?
It's going to be funny because it's pretty clear that like there's no appetite for. I mean, when he goes out there and says,
thirsting for Biden.
Yeah, when he goes out there and says millennials are a bunch of pussies and should stop whining so much. I mean, what is that even for? Yeah. I mean, even
Amy Klobuchar.
Yeah,
he's no last dragon.
No,
come on. Yeah. He can't even fucking touch Amy Targaryen.
Yeah, no, I mean that's just a small sample of his career. But if we could just go through it again, slavishly devoted to Israel and anything they do. If they want to launch a preemptive nuclear strike on Iran, he says, go for it.
Live your truth.
He big supporter of the Iraq War initially, before then, of course, becoming a critic and saying, it was incompetently executed, of course. Bank deregulation and just generally being a courtesan to the credit card industry and every other corrupt corporation that has a mailbox in Delaware that allows them to evade taxation or regulation.
Yeah.
Insane tough on crime.
Psychotic prison sentences for tiny amounts of drugs.
Yeah.
Violent thugs, super predators. I mean, honestly, he makes Kamala look almost good in that regard. But then again, she was in the front lines carrying out.
Yeah, she was
policy.
actually throwing them in jail using the laws that he'd passed. She was.
So there you go. Who's worse?